with ninja stars.
Hey, why did we pick a fruit shaped exactly like my head?
Just stop talking. You're ruining my concentration.
You're fine. Chill. He's gonna die.
Wait, did you hear that? What was that?
Well, nothing we can do. You guys want to grab pizza?
What the heck are those things? They look like little Shreks to me.
We've prepared our whole lives for this.
Oh my, I'm gonna be sick. Leo, what happened? Is Donnie bleeding?
It was an accident. Mikey, watch out!
So, you were baby turtles who made contact with mystery goo.
Well, we prefer the term ooze, but yeah.
It's like more like, it's just nicer.
It rolls off the tongue better, yeah.
Ooze.
It's nice, right? It's ooze.
Thanks for being here. Thank you, Jimmy. Thanks for having us back. Hey, yo, how's everybody doing? Amazing Arizona Con. Las Vegas. See, I was testing you. We got our family and friends here from Arizona, and we've known Jimmy from Arizona forever. But it's so nice to be back here in Vegas with you guys, and thanks for coming. Appreciate you so very much. Very much. I'm going to do a couple slides here. I do a little bit of history, turtles, some of the stuff you guys know, some you may not know, and then we'll have some time for some questions. So, let's see if I can make this thing work. The first slide. What? Look at that! You know, that cover next year is going to be 40 years old. Can you believe it? That's amazing. I can't believe that after 40 years, I still get to do what I do. Thanks to all you folks. It's all your fault that I'm up here. Thank you. Bless you. Thank you for standing in that line. Thanks for coming and hanging out. So this is 40 years old, as I said. Pete and I started as a dream, and I'll get into that in a minute. But one of my favorite things that we did for the 30th anniversary, when we did this cover, an editor once said, 30 years later, he said, I always wondered what happened 10 seconds later. And so for the 30th anniversary, Pete and I teamed up and we did this cover, which is literally 10 seconds after that first cover was done. So that was really fun. So it's a way to see what we're going to do for the 40th. This guy, you guys know who Jack Kirby is? Yes. Jack Kirby was the man to me when I was growing up. The first thing I said to him when I met him many years ago is, he's the reason that Pete and I bonded. He's the reason I started drawing comics. He was the guy that put the passion, the love of all things storytelling into me and Peter, and this is what we bonded over. But this guy was the legend, the genius, our original inspiration, the giant I stand on the shoulders of, and keeps inspiring me to this very day. There he is. Pete and I actually got to meet him many, many years ago at San Diego Comic-Con. Nicest guy in the world, and it's funny, when I first met him, it was the scariest moment in my life, and we heard he was in the building at San Diego Comic-Con. Pete and I dropped everything. We ran over to where he was, and he already was surrounded by a whole bunch of fans, and he was just finishing answering a question. Somebody had asked him, how did he create Captain America with Joe Simon? And so we gave this wonderful glowing answer. And then the next fan question, the guy was so nervous, he asked the same exact question. And nobody laughed, and Kirby especially didn't laugh. He gave that fan that same moment, that same precious answer. You knew that the guy that loved what he did, he loved his fans. And I always said, if I'm lucky enough to have one fan, I hope I treat him with the respect that Jack Kirby did. So I appreciate you guys filling up this auditorium and hanging out. I would not be here without you guys. I have the best job ever because I have the best fans ever. So, thank you. Oh, this was one of my favorite Kirby comics back in the day. The first movie I ever saw in the theaters was Planet of the Apes. Yeah, for his 100th birthday, they did a celebration. I got to do an issue of Commandy, so that was my biggest fan moment. And you know, man, what a treasure! I'll take you way back 40 years ago. This house in Dover, New Hampshire, in the living room in the front corner there, that's where the Ninja Turtles were created. It's started as a joke. Peter and I formed a studio called Mirage Studios. Because it was a mirage, it wasn't a studio, it was our living room. here's my desk. I couldn't afford a desk back in those days, so I found this overstuffed chair. Somebody had put it on the front lawn with a free sign on it. And so late one night, I was sitting in that chair, I had a little lap board on my desk, and I was thinking of something to make Peter laugh. And I said, if Bruce Lee was an animal, what would be the stupidest animal Bruce Lee would be? Fast-moving martial artist. How about a turtle? And so I did this sketch. Turtle standing upright, mask strapped, nunchucks wrapped his arm, mask on, and I put it on Pete's desk, and I said, this is going to be the next big thing, ha ha ha. And of course, he laughed, and he did a sketch to one-up my sketch, and he did this drawing, changed a few things. Again, I laughed, and so studio one-upmanship, you get shipped, you gotta, one-up the other guy, so I said, if one, why not four? And so I did this sketch, all four turtles, different weapons, in this pose, and I had done it in pencil, and I put this logo that said Ninja Turtles, and I said, I gave it to him, he laughed, and when he inked it in, he had a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and we just thought this was the dumbest thing we'd ever seen, but we also loved it, and we said, we need to come up with a story that tells how these characters got to be the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and so that was 1983 to 1984, we started working on the comic, and it was really kind of a hodgepodge of all our favorite things we loved about comics. Batman, we rolled them all into this one idea, and we started putting the pieces together for the story. And one of the most common asked questions is, where did you guys come up with the names? And when I was in high school, I was not only a comic book geek, I was also a history geek, and I especially loved art history. And this is a mural I did in 1980 when I graduated Westbrook High School as my tribute to my hero, which was Leonardo da Vinci. So when Pete and I were saying, well, traditional Asian names make sense, but not funny enough. We're talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? How about Doug, Bob, Steve? Still not funny enough. And I just blurted out, well, why don't we name one of them Leonardo? Michelangelo, Raphael. Pete laughed out loud again. That was the barometer. So we said, we got something here. And I love telling this part of the story because before Donatello was Donatello, there was another sculptor I liked, a Renaissance sculptor. His name was Bernini, and so Donatello was almost named Bernini. But I'm glad we went with Donatello, as I think it works much better. But that's where the names originally came from. Look at that! Oh my goodness! 40 years ago, look at that guy trying to grow a mustache. I don't think I can still grow a mustache, but May 5th, 1984. After Pete and I had done the story, the origin, had drawn the comic, we actually borrowed about $1,200 from my uncle, early form of crowdfunding. My uncle lent us enough money to print 3,000 copies of the book. And so we published it, we printed it at a local printer, self-published it, printed it at a local printer, and so May 5th, 1984, we premiered at this very small comic convention in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And man, we never thought would actually sell out. And so we invited all of our family and friends to come stand around the table so it looked like we had a big crowd. But it's funny that that's why the first Turtle story was a complete story, because we never thought we'd do a second issue. But that was probably the highlight for us. And we said if it was only one comic we ever did, this is going to be it. And what a great time. And then this weird thing happened as you guys started buying it. It's like, and thank you. And so first there was issue 1, and then we worked at issue 2, and then sales kept going up, and suddenly here I am 40 years later still drawing comics. And again, it's all your fault, and I thank you very much. Still working on the mustache, as you can see. So this was Peter and I, one of the first big conventions. This is actually a convention we met Jack Kirby in 1985. And it was such a great time, such an inspiration. They still can't grow the mustache. This was Peter and I about 3 years ago. Peter and I text each other as often as we can. He doesn't travel anyway. And it's funny because a lot of people would love to see him as much as I'd love to see him out at shows. There's a lot more than we all do. But he hasn't not been on an airplane since 1986. And so whenever I'm back in Massachusetts, I get a chance to hang out with Pete. And so we went and got ice cream, and this is a selfie, so he's still awesome, and, without Pete, there'd be no Turtles, so he's my bro. This is actually, I just want to show this as a fun book. We're always going back into the history of all things Turtles, and IDW has done such a wonderful job of packaging some of the early comic books and these hardcovers and trade paperbacks and things. And this is the newest one. It just came out about 2 weeks ago. This is a cover of Ultimate Collection number 7, and what's special about it is this reproduces every single cover that Pete and I did in the early years, from the Mirage Studios through the Archie series to the role-playing games. The stuff that's got anecdotes and behind-the-scene pictures and pencils and inks and color versions. So if you get a chance to check it out, it's got a great bit of history, some really neat unpublished stuff in it that I think you get a kick out of. So this is really fun. I want to point this out because there was this crazy guy up here just a little while ago. What's his name? James Tinian, have you heard of him? James is not only an awesome, incredible, fantastically talented writer, but he took on the task of pulling together a Batman Turtles crossover. And not only once, but 3 series. Did a fantastic job. James, I love you. He's an amazing writer. He really did such a wonderful job of making these 2 universes come together in this series. And so this is a fun cover that Freddie Williams, myself, and John Samavera did as a tribute, and thanks to the All Things Batman Turtles. But there's an omnibus coming out this year, reprinting all 3 issues, all 3 series in 1 issue. So look for it because it's well worth it, and it's a great series. So Batman was a big influence on my work. So Last Ronin, any of you guys seen Last Ronin yet? Yes? Such an amazing thing, and I think of coming up on 40 years of Turtles. The idea for Last Ronin was actually written by Peter and I in 1987. We had got to the point where we just finished a big story arc. We were trying to think of where do the Turtles go next from here. This is issue 11, if you can believe that. So we thought, if we look 30 years down the road, something set in 2017 as the final Turtle story, let's write that, and that'll kind of give us a lighthouse to navigate towards, kind of thing. And then this weird thing happened in 1987, is that's when we started work on the cartoon show and the toys, and then came the movies. So suddenly, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years passed, and we never get to do this. So fast forward to the IDW comic series, and Tom Waltz and I, the incredible Tom Waltz, and a whole cast of fantastic artists, were coming to the end of 100 issues. Thanks to you guys again. Thank you. The IDW series could not have been possible without you guys. So we did 100 issues, and we were getting to this big ending, this big climax, and saying, well, where do we go from here? And I said, well, I wrote the story with Pete in 1987, 31 years ago at the time that we look back at it. And I said, why don't we adapt that into something that would still be all that Pete and I dreamed it would be, which is the last Turtle story, The Last Ronin. So I spent about 6 or 7 months expanding the story. Then Tom and I spent the next 2 years bringing it to life. That's some of the first covers. These are some of the cool covers, but I want to show you. Oh, this was the fun stuff. This was some of the original notes from 1987 that Pete and I wrote, piecing the story together at the time. So the Last Ronin was based again on probably a 22-page outline that we wrote in 1987. And so to bring it into the here and now was quite a task, quite daunting. So one of the first things I do, I have to figure out how all the pieces fit together, and I usually do it by drawing and filling up these big sketchbooks full of notes. And so this is something that I drew first. Michelangelo's look, his outfit, all the pieces, how it fits together. This helps me sort of get in the frame of mind of designing the story they want to tell. And this is coming out, I think, in some new collections. You'll see some of the behind-the-scenes stuff. So we arrived at the final look of The Last Ronin. We stuck with that through the entire series, which I did all the layouts for, and I worked with not only the coolest you get to see the coolest artists that helped me adapt the series are the Escorza brothers. They're identical twins. They draw exactly the same. They both pencil, they both ink, and they both draw it together at the same times. In fact, I've actually seen them at shows reaching over and drawing on each other's work while they're doing sketches for fans. It's like their brain is completely connected, but they're fantastic. So the Escorza brothers are the artists of the series. Ben Bishop, I brought him in. He's a buddy of mine from Maine to do the flashbacks. And the whole thing was colored by Luis Antonio Delgado, which was a fantastic colorist that brought the whole series together. These are a couple more images from Last Ronin. We completed the series. It came out, middle of 2022 and has been a phenomenal hit, thanks again to you guys. And through that, we had come up with an idea of, while we were working through the series, it would be great to stay in the Ronin-verse for a while. So we came up with this idea called Last Ronin, Lost Years. Oh, I want to show this. This is one of my favorite pages from one of the final issues of the series, where Michelangelo, no spoilers, but he's haunted by his brothers throughout the series, and you have to read the rest if you haven't read it yet. Oh, this is a fun one. Then I'll show you I thought I had another slide in here. This is leading up to my last couple of slides, and then I'm going to take some questions from you guys, because I talk a lot, and I want to make sure if you guys have questions of anything I didn't cover, you can step up to the mic here and ask away. But this is a drawing I did in 1984 for Peter's parents, and it just Sharpie classic beaky turtles, as we call them, to the more pumped up version that was in 2014, man, still, I'm sorry, I look at this stuff and I go, I still can't believe I get to do this 40 years later. I'm still drawing comics. This was a really fun series I did as we were wrapping up the 100 issues of the IDW series. I went to do this cover that was inspired by Jim Lee's X-Men cover. We had the 4 covers that all made one image when you put them all 4 together. And so I fit in every character I could from the entire IDW universe into one cover. And, oh, there it is. That's so there's the Last Ronin cover. So this is the Last Ronin Lost Years. Issue 3, I think, just came out or is coming out this week. It's going to be a 5-issue series, and it's including actually. And what we did with Lost Years is it's a prequel, sequel to Last Ronin 1 that actually leads into the sequel, which is Last Ronin 2, which will come out later this year. And so through the Lost Years series, we cover this period of time when Michelangelo had gone to Japan to see what happened to Splinter and Donatello, found out what happened there, and then began walking. And then it was a 16-year journey that brought him back to Last Ronin number 1, where his journey starts. So they were showing you exactly what happened while he used Splinter's journal to train throughout that 16 years. And so each issue takes place 3 years apart, and that's the main part of the story. But the other part of the story is you get to see the new turtles that we introduced at the end of Last Ronin number 1 series, issue 5. You see them grow up from age 3, 6, 9, 12 to 15. So at issue 5, you see them at 15. That's going to lead straight into the follow-up, which is Last Ronin 2. So, all right, there it is. This is what I get to do every day. I get up, play with my 17-year-old dog, see our son off to school, and then I go and sit and draw comics all day, and that's all your fault. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So listen, if you guys have any questions, there are no silly questions. All questions are good. All questions are awesome. We'll get through as many as we can, and they'll give us I don't know how much time we got, but I'll get through as many as I can. Like I said, I talk a lot, so I'll try to keep the answers short. Okay. They're going to throw me out at some point. Oh, wait. We got plenty of time. We got 4.5 hours left, so I hope you guys have always used the hope you all use the restroom.
Yes, how you doing, Kevin?
Good, thanks. How are you?
All right, glad to see you. Okay, I remember you're a martial artist, but I can't remember. What styles did you study? You dabbed in things, but I know you had to be careful because of your hands.
It's called running away. Running. Hey! No, it's funny. I remember this interview that Pete and I were doing very early in the very early stage of the Turtles. And so this person that was interviewing me said, well, the story takes place in New York City, so you guys are from New York. It features martial artists, so are you guys black belts? So we had to correct the person quickly because at that time in 1985, I'd never been to New York City. So everything I knew about New York, I stole from Jack Kirby or Frank Miller comics. And I said, if being a black belt means that I've watched every Bruce Lee movie 100 times in a row, or the Kung Fu David Carradine TV series, then yes, I'm a black belt. So it wasn't. But many years later, I did start studying martial arts, which was really eye-opening because until you start getting into the philosophies behind it, the different techniques, the different styles, the importance that it's not to promote violence or to be violence is more defensive, understand yourself, understand your body. So I did a lot of did a little wushu, a little kali. I did savat. I like kali. I like the stick fighting. I did Brazilian jiu-jitsu for a while. But then I was afraid I was going to hurt my hand because there's a lot of it's arm holds and breaks. I did Muay Thai, unfortunately. Love Muay Thai, but that's probably one of the most painful ones you could ever do. But I studied a bunch of them, which is kind of based on Bruce Lee's philosophy of Jeet Kune Do, which is what a lot of mixed martial artists will use that now, is they'll study multiple techniques and multiple martial arts forms, which makes you more effective against, a combatant that knows, maybe you know a little bit more than he or she does. So it's great. So I love them all. There's a lot to be learned in all of them. So.
Oh, one more quick question.
Sure.
One more quick question.
Of course, yeah.
Okay, when Charlie Cox was over here, you said you would have loved to see Daredevil and the Turtles crossover. Any word that might have happened?
No, still hopeful. It's going to be one of those things that if they won't let me do it, I'll just do it on my own and I'll put it out for free. No, actually, it was funny. I had forgotten that meeting Charlie here, because to me he was the perfect Daredevil. I thought he did such a great job, because that was really the embodiment, especially of the Frank Miller Daredevil style, which was really inspirational to me. Because you guys know, if you don't know, you know the history of the Turtles and Daredevil. I'll give you a quick, brief history. So, as I said, I grew up a huge fan of Daredevil, and in Daredevil's origin, New York City, a blind man steps out onto the street, an older blind man, and this truck is barreling towards him, carrying nuclear waste, radioactive waste, which happens a lot in New York, I guess. So the young Matt Murdock jumps out and saves this man from getting hit by the truck. A canister comes loose in the truck, hits Matt Murdock near the eyes, and blinds him, and then helps him become Daredevil. But in the comic, they never said what happened to the canister. So if you look at the Turtle origin, it's the same origin, except we have the canister continue bouncing down the street, and this poor young man standing in front of a open sewer cover, holding a glass terrarium with 4 turtles in it. That same canister that blinded Matt Murdock and gave him Daredevil's powers hits this terrarium. Everything falls into the sewer next to this rat. That's how the Turtles were exposed to the ooze. In Daredevil, he has a mentor named Stick. We have Splinter. And then lastly is in the Daredevil comic books, and actually in the Daredevil live-action TV series, he fights an evil ninja horde called the Hand. We have the Foot. So Marvel probably should have sued our butts off. They did not, so that's a Daredevil tie-in, so thanks.
Thank you.
Cheers. Maybe there'll be a crossover one day. That'd be nice.